Today on the Cameron Journal podcast, we are joined by Daniel Dluzneski. He is a expert in security and whatnot. The big story of today is that he used to work for Pinellas County School System as the coordinator of emergency management. Pinellas County is in Florida, and for safety and security. And we're going to get into school shootings and safety and all this sort of thing. He has a history with the Secret Service, and had a lovely helper dog named Korak. And we're gonna get into maybe some of that and who was protected and all those sorts of fun stories. But it's gonna be an interesting dive into modern school security, especially in the light of recent events as we're recording this in January of 2025. So, welcome, Daniel, to the Cameron Journal podcast.
Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate you having me on. It's an important subject. I know it's an uncomfortable one, but it's something that needs to be discussed.
Yes, absolutely. Could not agree more. So, why don't we start from the very beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into all this?
Yeah, started my career with the Secret Service a long time ago, back in 1988, and I was there for 24
Hey, now
years.
that was the year I was born. Let's not so much with this long ago stuff.
So I started with Reagan, and I finished up with Obama. And when I moved down here to Florida after I retired, I was going to retire. Unbeknownst to me, being an alpha personality, that lasted about 3 months, and it just drove me crazy. And of course, my ex-wife crazy, but that's not the reason we got divorced. Anyway, there was a job opening, and she was actually the one who pointed out. She says, "Hey, this job may fit for you." It was with the school system, and it fit my resume, and it was for an emergency manager, school security. Unrealizing that there was so many school children down here in Florida. I'm like, no, this is where people go to retire. There are no kids down there. I found out, no, I was completely wrong. Pinellas County in Florida is a very dense county. I was in charge of over 100,000 students at 140 schools, which actually, that still was not the largest in Florida. Miami and Orange County has the biggest one. We were still only probably the seventh largest just in Florida alone. But it was just me. I had no staff, nobody, just me. So I was solely in charge of all those schools and all those students and told, here you go, make us safe. So thrown into this, I just used my skills that I had from the Secret Service and some common sense. One thing I didn't like was to sit at a desk all day. So I started to go out and visiting these principals and the schools themselves. And I made a pact that I wanted to visit every 140 schools and meet with those principals. It took me about a year, but I did it. And I was proud of that fact. So I got to meet them face to face. And we did slowly make improvements. This is way back. I'm sorry, I keep using the word way back. This is back in like 2014, obviously after Columbine, but we still had schools using codes. I would go in and they'd say, oh, is a code red? Is a code this? No. We want to get away from codes. If you're going to talk about something, use plain language. It's a lockdown. It's a lockout. It's a fire. It's a bomb. Whatever it is, use plain language. That took a while to get through. Anyway, I did have some success dealing with the school bureaucracy of getting things done. The only problem I had, Cameron, was, and one of the reasons after 4 years I left, I didn't have autonomy. I didn't have the power to go into a school and say, that door needs to be fixed. That gate needs to be locked. I couldn't do that. Sure, I could tell them to do that, but they're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll wait till we hear from the school board. So I had to go through 3 steps of a process to get to the person to finally make the decision to say, oh, okay, now we need a lock on that door. So that was, had to work around that and just slowly and gradually got to make some changes. But yeah, that's where I ended up. That's where I did make some progress. And it wasn't until Marjory Stoneman Douglas was the school shooting there, where at one point they said, oh, basically, and it was sad to say, but we're kind of like ambulance shakers with this product, with this marketing, with this school security stuff. Something bad happens, here they come. Hey, we've got a product that'll save you here. We've got an issue, save you there. We've got training that'll save you here, which is completely wrong. And the other thing I want to mention, Cameron, before we continue, is that this is a completely unregulated industry. There's no certification. There's no training. There's no college degree. that says or tells you or certifies you as a school safety expert. No such thing. I don't want the federal government involved. The states should be involved with something like this. Anyway, to make a longer story short, after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, I was told, hey, you're going to get staff, you're going to get people because of this massive shooting. You're going to get all kinds of help that you need. Never worked out. Florida legislation said, you know what? We're going to have the state, local, county police take over anything to do with school safety. I thought that was completely wrong, even though I'm former law enforcement, because law enforcement, as you know, is reactive. They don't have the time to be proactive. So I left, became a consultant, wrote a book, and now I go on podcasts telling people what's the right thing to do and don't listen to a lot of these marketers.
All right. Well, for clarity, Pinellas County is Clearwater and part of Tampa. I had to
Mm-hmm.
look that up. I didn't have that. I had to go look to make sure I thought that's what it was. But I wanted to double check and make sure. And for those that are maybe frantically wondering where the hell this conversation is taking place, that's where it is. Um, so so I get the school safety and security thing and all this type of thing. I'm gonna go right into the deep end of this because I grew up in Colorado. My aunt was the kids who did Columbine were students of my aunt, and she was a
Mm-hmm.
horsewoman, and she's an equestrian, and they had done equestrian. So that was very close. And Colorado was a lot smaller back then, so everyone kind of knew somebody, especially if you lived in that part of town.
Sure.
Um, we are the only major industrialized nation who seems to have this problem. Why do you think our schools are so dangerous?
I would come back and slightly disagree with you that this is a entire world problem. We've heard about the issues over in Germany, Russia, England, South America, especially Asia with the stabbings. So it is not just a United States problem. It is a worldwide problem. The only thing is, in certain areas, they'll use different types of weapons, whether it's a car, a bomb, mortars, a knife, whatever it takes. So it is something that's worldwide. The media just doesn't pick up on that. But the reason this is just my opinion now. If we're getting into areas where the reason this keeps happening, look, you had a pandemic that lasted for 2 years. Kids were just, they, anyways, everything was wrong about what happened with that pandemic. These kids lost 2 years of schooling and now they're at home and they're being taught these things that parents didn't agree with. And it just snowballed. So now these kids are missing 2 years. And now that schools are trying to catch up the 2 years with their grades. And teachers, as you probably know, have it incredibly tough. Not only are they getting pressure from the administration saying, hey, we got to get the grades of the school up itself. Because I don't know in Colorado, but here, schools are graded A, B, C, D, E, F. Not only that, but now you've got the students' grades to catch up. You're dealing with disciplinary problems. Most of the time, and I know it is rare. I know people focus on that on school shootings. They are rare. However, what's happening more often is weapons that are showing up in schools, clubs, knives, guns that are showing up in schools more often than they used to be. Reason for that could be fear, curiosity, gangs, obviously cyberbullying, that these kids are bringing weapons to schools. So it's a to me, it's a multitude of things that have created this. Sure, I could talk about when I was a kid. I lived on a farm. I was in the country. Used to have guns in the rack of the truck. Okay, we never thought about doing anything like that. That doesn't. What does that do? It doesn't go anywhere. Nowadays, you've got kids, especially with mental health issues, that they're. I don't know. I don't know. I've seen it in my son. He's 18. Social media, I think, is destroying our culture. This idea now, it used to be before phones. Again, I'm sorry, going back, you would be bullied at school. And then when you got home, you're okay. Now it's 24 hours. 24 hours a day, you're being bullied, cyberbullying, the social, the text, the constant addiction to these phones. So it's just a whole different issue that I think is going on in society.
That all makes sense, I suppose. But that does, I mean, the school violence and the duplicitous amount of especially school shootings we have in this country goes long before COVID, and it seems like no matter what we do, we can never manage to solve that problem, get over that hump, make schools more safe, regardless of the age or whatever have you. What's the biggest challenge there? Why can't we seem to get this right?
There's going to be a lot of opinions on that, Cameron. I don't go to the gun control part because that's just an argument that nobody wins. That's not going to happen. That guns are going to be taken away. It's basically something to do with society. Obviously, something has gone wrong with why these children are not getting the help they need, and it's something again that's where funds should be going. It used to be when this first started, I say first started, even from Columbine and on, it was, oh no, well, if we get rid of the guns, we'll be okay. No, that's not something that was going to happen. It was the idea that you need to watch out and see students that are having issues. So fortunately, there are ideas out there and things that are working. I think within the last couple of years, schools have started what they call threat assessment teams. Very good start. These teams are comprised of the principal, the SRO or school resource officer, hopefully if you have one, assistant principal, social worker, nurse, psychologist, whoever you get a hold of, and probably a couple of teachers that would like to join. And they would meet weekly. And I'm sorry, but yes, they will have files on certain students that have either made threats or have been told they made threats or something along the lines to just watch out for. And yes, it's an old cliche, see something, say something, but they tell these kids, look, if Johnny is acting weird or Susie or whoever, they've changed personality, please say something to someone, a mentor, a teacher you trust, the SRO, whoever, and say, look, there's something weird going on with my classmates. I need to find out, because the kid's got to take ownership. You're saving, you're helping the school. You're not snitching on anybody, nothing like that. You want this person to get help. So that at least is a good start with these threat assessment teams to find out what's going on. If you have school resource officers, I would highly encourage also to budget that way. Don't look at technology. Technology is nothing more than security theater, metal detectors and all this other stuff. Yes, I know you need cameras. You do, at a minimum amount, you need cameras. But it's more so the human factor of watching and looking for something that's going wrong. Look, the majority of these school shootings are done by former students or current students. They know the layout of the school. They're watching. They didn't wake up one morning, grab the gun and say, I'm going to go shoot up a school today. This takes months and months of planning. Internet stuff. I mean, stuff they're looking at, drawings, whatever. This is something someone has to observe. And to tell you the truth, in some respects, I blame parents that they're not watching this. They don't know what their kids are doing. Look, my son, and he's 18 now. He's still doing it. He will go to his room and be up there for hours on either social media, games, whatever. I don't know what the heck he's doing. And I think a lot of parents feel that same way. Do we all sit around the table anymore and have dinner? Rarely, not anymore. I would say half the country doesn't even do that. Maybe less than that. You don't know what the kids are doing. I ask parents, because I've gone the way of teachers and saying, teachers, this is what you need to do for active shooter training. And they'll tell me, Dan, I agree with you, but we're getting our orders from up above, school board, principal, superintendent, whoever. So now I go on and I'm telling parents, you got to talk to your kids. Find out what's going on. This is not anymore drive there, drop them off. I'll see you later. I got to go to work. I'll pick you up after soccer practice. That doesn't work anymore. You got to pin them down and say, look, give me a minute, 2 minutes. I just want to find out what's going on with any emergency procedures at your school. What are they doing? What are they doing? What are they doing for active shooters? Are they telling you to run out and evacuate? Are they telling you to lock down? Are they telling you to throw things at a supposed gunman? What are they doing? You got to find out. And if anything in there hits you in the gut, you're like, wow, I don't agree with that. You got to take action. You got to send letters. You got to go to school board meetings. Take that page and a half. You get 3 minutes. You're going to get a page and a half to talk to the school board. You got to get going on this and get together with a group. I don't care if it's Facebook or whatever, because the power of a group is going to work better than the power of an individual. Go there. Find out what the heck's going on. Do not sit back and think, oh, no, the school's got it. we're safe. And you know, any time anybody brings this up is when something happens. We just had the one happen in Wisconsin. That's when all the red flags go up. Oh my God, this happened right next door to me, or it happened in another, or it happened wherever. 2 kids, 10 kids, 20, whatever it is, the number. You should be on top of this all the time. You don't have to be paranoid about it, but find out what's going on with your kid if something happens at school and you disagree with it. You got to tell somebody. You got to tell somebody at the school. If it go further, if they're not listening, go to your legislatures. Hey, I don't agree with this training that they're giving. That puts my kid in danger. And I can tell you later on the kind of training that's out there, Cameron, that's going to put them in danger. And it's got civil suits up the yin yang in millions and millions of dollars. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's very understandable. I do want to talk about the issues of training all around this. The I guess the problem I get stuck at, and I think a lot of people get stuck at, and certainly the rhetoric on social media is stuck at, is the fact that we have to have this conversation and we're even producing this show, and this is something we have to deal with in this country. It's
Yeah,
aberrant to a civilized society.
I agree.
And I think a lot of people, rather than trying to, come up with a new training or come up with a new strategy or go to or whatever have you, they'd like to stop it at the root. And I think the most disturbing thing I'm hearing from you is that we can't. This is a problem we must learn to live with.
Yes, and it's not going to get any better. I mean, to be blunt, it's not, because you can't make the schools prisons. Why would you want schools to be a prison? School is supposed to be an open atmosphere, a welcoming atmosphere. Yet there was a line I had to draw between being welcoming and to also keep everybody safe. I'll give you one example, and this is a small example. There was a school that was a middle school, and I had a parent that went to the school to pick up their child. Well, there was a divorce. The parent was not allowed and was not on the list to pick up that student. Only the mother was. So the dad said, no, I'm here to pick him up. Well, the counter was only about 3 feet high. So he jumped over the counter, attacked a staffer, runs into the school to go get his child. Now, fortunately, nothing happened. He didn't hurt anybody else. The child was fine. But from that point on, you're like, oh my God, why are the counters 3 feet high? Why can someone jump over the counter and get into the school? So I had to bring the counter up at least to, 4.5, 5 feet, and then bring, like a bank, bring glass down from the ceiling and just have a little thing at the bottom so they couldn't get in and attack the staffers or get into the school. So with small things like that, look, we've had schools here down in Florida that were built back in the 20s, for gosh sakes. And in order to get the money to just make them partially safe, not totally safe, there has to be funding behind that. So yes, is it ever going to end? No. Of course not. And it has nothing to do with guns. They'll come in with something else, bomb, fire, whatever. They'll think of something. I mean, look at the guy in New Orleans. Use a vehicle, run them down.
Yeah, no, yes, no.
The idea that, and I want to stay away from that. There's no sense even talking about guns. But the idea that you try to make it as safe as possible, it's what's called a holistic approach. I don't like that word, but they all use it now in the industry. You start from the outside in. From the exterior fencing, which is at least 6 foot high, you have one area of entrance. Once they arrive, I understand all the doors open for buses and stuff. Once school starts, one entrance only. And that entrance has to be a lobby area where they're trapped. Meaning if a person comes in and they're checked out and they're good to go, the only way they get in is either a key, a swipe, or they're escorted in. If they don't have access, they only got one way out, to go back out the way they came. And around the rest of that school, all those doors better be locked and closed. From that point on, once you get inside, every classroom door needs to be locked during class time. This is another thing that they push back against me. Oh, no, we can't lock the classroom doors. They got kids coming in and out. They want to go to the bathroom and they want to go here. Tough. You're already one step ahead in a lockdown. Keep that classroom door locked during class time. Even if you leave it empty, you walk out, lock that door. Because I don't know what's going on, where you went to lunch or whatever. Somebody's going to get in there, lock the door, they're good to go. So this idea that it has to be, I'm sorry, but teachers, they didn't sign up for this. I've gone to plenty of meetings with teachers after any shootings that are going on, and a lot of them obviously are female, and they will go to these meetings and raise their hand going, my husband didn't want me to come in today. I'm scared to death that something's going to happen. They didn't sign up for this. So you talk about the toughest job in the world. Not only now they got discipline problems to get the grades up, but now they got to worry about being shot. Yes, it is very rare, extremely rare. However, if these teachers are trained correctly, yes, I'm sorry, they do have to flip a switch, not to become some military, Rambo, but at least have the confidence that when you go into a lockdown, here are the steps you take. You're going to be perfectly safe. Now, I'll play a devil's advocate because I know you're probably going to ask this question. I agree with lockdowns over everything else. And a lockdown for active shooters is the door to the classroom is locked, the blinds are closed, lights are out, kids sit on the floor quietly. You turn your cell phone off or on silent. You don't listen to any announcements. You don't open that door for any reason at all. The pushback I get is that they're sitting ducks. They're not. No shooter in the history, and we go back to shootings way before Columbine. We're talking 1800s, school shootings, school bombings back in Bath, Michigan. You can look that one up. I think that was in the 20s or 30s. No school shooter has breached a locked door. It takes too long. They don't have time. They want easy access. A great video to look at is the Nashville shooter who shot out the glass doors, walked in, and you see them walking down the hallway, checking the doors. Locked, move on. Locked, move on. Open, they're in. They're not going to try to get through a locked door. Now, the opposite of this is targeting. That's a totally different subject. If someone is targeted in the school, or where targeting usually happens, as you know, is usually hospitals. Because you got somebody that's really mad, their mother died, sister, brother, whatever. They're after the doctors or whatever. They're targeting that individual. Targeting is completely different. If someone is targeted in that school, you've got other means. You've got file cabinets. You've got desks you can push up against that door as long as that door opens in and block that door. But again, it's going to take them too long. There was an incident up in Minnesota. It was called Red Lake, Minnesota. And I'm sorry about the year. I think it was 2005. And it was on a Native American reservation. The individual there shot his grandfather, killed him, shot it and killed his grandfather's girlfriend, then went to the school, shot the security guard, sees a teacher running down the hallway, goes running after that teacher. She goes into the classroom and locks the door. He shoots that door, Cameron, 3 times. He didn't get in. That lock didn't budge. He had to go around a different area, busted open the glass window and got in. They got him. I think he killed himself. They finally killed him. Anyway, that was right then. And this is back then where these locks weren't as good as they are now. Door locks now are really, really good. They're not going to try to shoot out a door lock. So that's where I emphasize lockdowns for active shooter has worked for a number of years, and I advocate that they're used.
Well, that's no, I mean that all, I guess, as frightening as it is, makes sense at a certain point. So when it comes to, this industry and the trainings and what's being peddled, you've mentioned there's a lot of charlatans in the industry.
Yeah.
What's up with that? What's
Right.
the issue there?
There is a company called ALICE. It's an acronym, and it's ALICE. And it's easy to look up on the internet, and it stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It was created by, I believe, a law enforcement personnel. Their training it's dangerous, just to say the least. Now, the thing about it is, and it's not just me, there are other people that are mentors of mine in the industry. Kenneth Trump is one of them, no relation to the president, and Michael Dorn, he's with Safe Havens International. There have been lawsuits against this company in the millions, civil lawsuits, just for the drilling alone, that this doesn't work. There's been articles out there that doesn't work. Anyway, there are schools that love this. The reason they love it is because lockdowns are passive. Passive. You're sitting there waiting. You're waiting for the good guys to come. This ALICE training makes you reactive. You're doing something. Okay? So the first one's alert. Perfect. You're supposed to alert. Plain language. We're in a lockdown. Okay. Second one's lockdown. Perfect. Yeah. You're in a lockdown. I absolutely agree. The third one, I, is inform. There's supposed to be an individual, we would hope some administration individual, who's supposed to get on the loudspeaker and tell the entire school where the shooter is and where they're going. I don't know, Cameron. There's no school that I know in existence and can follow someone through the school. You may have cameras in certain areas, You're not gonna be able to follow anybody and know where they're going. It's ludicrous.
Perhaps in
The,
the future with AI, we'll be able to do
that well,
that.
not in my lifetime. I'm hoping in yours. The C is called counter. Now they've modified it a bit, but counter was the one where they would want a gunman if he got into the classroom for students to take something, a book, a thermos, I don't know, and throw it at the gunman for a reason is beyond me.
Is that before or after he mows down 5 students?
Thank you, Cameron. I'm glad you have some common sense and some people don't.
Well, look at
But
the Uvalde shooting. Like that is, I mean, one poor like 7-year-old girl covered herself with her friend's blood to so the shooter would think she was dead. When was she supposed to throw a stapler or crayons at the shooter? That's
well,
insane.
that was an
I know nothing, and I think that's insane.
right. Oh, it's insane. That was an anomaly, and that's the reason why I wrote the book after that incident because that response was just ludicrous. That was just ridiculous. However, 99.9% of the police departments, they're going to go. I just want to qualify that was a disaster of epic proportions. Anyway, this training, back to this Alice training, this counter. When you think about it, there are no psychologists, social workers, school pediatricians, any kind of psychologist or that works with children would say this type of training is good for them. Just to give you an example, let's say you've got a kid, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, never shot a basketball in his life. Don't even know what it's like, doesn't like it. Anyways, you're going to bring him out to the gymnasium, hand him a basketball and go, okay, shoot at that basket. You've got 1 hour. I'm going to give you 1 hour of training and shoot at that basket. Okay. And see how many times you can make it. Then you're going to take the basketball away. And for 6 months, he hasn't touched that basketball. Then during the most emotionally just tragic thing that's going to happen to them, a gunman comes into the classroom and they're supposed to pick something up. And not just them, but the entire classroom is precisely at the same time supposed to throw something at the gunman and hit them with God knows what. Are you out of your mind? If I was a parent, I'd be like, you want my kid to do what?
I mean, this might work if it's in high school and it's a classroom full of the football or the baseball or the basketball team. This might be effective, but not like literally in no other scenario.
No. And my basic question, Cameron, would be, how did the gunman get in the classroom? Was the door unlocked? He sure didn't shoot it out if it was locked. How'd he get in there? So to me, it's like, if you've got a gunman at the door and he's not giving up, well, hell, you better grab that file cabinet, that desk, and block that door. So this idea that they're going to get into the classroom, I would love to see the statistics of how many times this has happened. Uvalde was one. Well, obviously, the door was open because he walked right in. And the door was open for the police also. Anyways, I don't want to stay on that subject because that was just a disaster. But the percentages I would love to see of how many times a gunman has actually got into the classroom. So anyways, with that being said, this type of training, now the last one's evacuate. And that's also a subject we could get on. Okay, so what happens with the evacuation is also another type of training called run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight was created years ago by the Department of Homeland Security. Excuse me. And there's a video out there done by, I think, the Houston Police Department. Very good video. It's for businesses. It's for corporations, adults. It's not made for children. Somehow this transferred over to children that you're going to run, hide, fight. Well, what? I'm going to have elementary kids fight? Run? Where are you going? So my whole thing about this evacuation, getting out, who's the burden?
Again, maybe with the defensive line of the high school football team, but even then that's dicey. Like,
right. No, I get it. So what happens is who's the burden on? Who makes a decision to evacuate? They're not going to make an announcement like everybody evacuate. It's left on the teacher. So you've got a teacher being told if something happens, it's on you to stay in lockdown or evacuate. What teacher is going to take that responsibility or that liability? I tell people, if I'm a teacher, even if I have a weapon, I'm not leaving that classroom. No way. Where am I going? I don't know where the gunman is. Even if somebody told me, oh, he's 100 yards over that way, I'm going to believe that person? What? It could be another guy. I have no idea. There's no
and they can see you coming and they can shoot first.
Thank you. There's no reason to leave that classroom. And on top of that, even if you make that decision, like, okay, the exit is right here. It's literally 10 feet out the door. We're going to go. You're going to get at least 5 or 6 kids go, I'm not going anywhere. My dad's a policeman. My dad's military. He said we stay in the classroom. Or they're frozen in fear. They're not going. You got 25, 30 kids. You're kidding me. What do you mean you're going to evacuate? But yet, Cameron, they drill to this. They will drill. Here we go. We're going to, and they walk. Of course, they're not going to run. Here we go. Like a fire drill. We're going to walk to the exit if this ever happens. What teacher is going to take that liability, that responsibility? Can you imagine the burden of deciding, gee, should we evacuate? Should we lock down? Stay in a lockdown. There's no reason to evacuate. Now, I get the question. Well, what if the gunman's over here? Or what if he's over there? We can pass the kids through the window. Okay, look, every situation's different, but 99.9% of the time, you're going to stay in a lockdown. If you're on the first floor and you've got police right outside the window saying, it's safe to come out the window. Okay, sure, if that's what you want to do and you think it's safe and the police are right there before they even kill the gunman, get them out. Okay, how many times is that going to happen? Rarely. More rare than school shooting itself. So stay away from that type of training. Don't listen to this. I know it's a reactive. Cameron, here's the deal. Sandy Hook, teacher goes out and confronts the shooter, dead. Nashville, principal comes out, dead. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, gym teacher comes out, confronts the shooter, dead. Now, all the way down the line, because of this type of training, they think they can talk down the shooter. Really? Look, that shooter is mentally, they're gone. They are so far ahead. Their end game is either suicide by cop, they're going to kill themselves. They may, like the kid from Cruz from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, may give themselves up. But more than they're already gone. You're not going to talk them down. You just should have talked to them 6 months ago when they had issues. Now, when they're going through like a robot, because everyone you talk to, everyone who's gone through one of these says they've just had a blank stare and they're just going and they're just getting as many victims as possible. You're not going to talk them down. Don't. And I've had principals get so emotional, especially elementary school ones, because that's their kids, their family.
Right.
And we go through a drill and they'll say, okay, we're going to do a drill, but I'm coming with you. Because I would walk around the campus because I don't work there. I'm just walking around to make sure everybody's safe. All the doors are closed. And I said, well, what would you do during a real event? She would go, and again, there's a female principal. She go, oh, I'm going to walk around, make sure the doors are closed. I said, then you're not going to go home alive. And they just look at me with this look like, no, I have to make, they're my kids. I have to make them safe. I said, how? Are you carrying a weapon? Well, no, but I got to make sure. Well, then you're not going to go home. You're going to die. Stay in your office. And this is even worse than an alpha personality because you want to do something. You can't imagine someone with that personality and that kind of responsibility as a principal of elementary school to sit in their office with the door locked, waiting for the police to arrive when they're hearing the most horrible sounds they're probably ever going to hear, unless they were in war. I can't imagine that happening, but that's what you have to do. You have to keep yourself safe. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help anybody. So don't go out thinking you're going to confront the shooter or thinking you're going to help someone else lock a door. No, depend on your training and drilling, and the teachers will do what they need to do, and you keep yourself safe.
One of the things I've always sort of wondered about, we've had this in our lives for, counting from Columbine, 26 years.
Yeah.
Why have not modern schools been, especially new construction, built to deal with these threats? They've had 25 plus years to reconstruct America's schools. It seems to me, and I know you confronted this because you said that in the county, all these schools were built a long time ago and all this type of thing. Why do you think schools haven't embraced a more modern school ideal construction design and type to reduce these sorts of threats?
Cameron, it's pretty sad, but they're still in the mindset that schools should be an open, welcoming, clear building. You would not believe some of the modern buildings in schools with the amount of glass because it looks good. It's very contemporary. It looks modern, all this glass. And you can't make it bulletproof. You can't because the expense would be double what it is.
And the weight.
It looks good. It looks good. Yeah. So I was lucky that I went where I worked. It was everybody from ground up to build a school. The architects were there, the school builders. maintenance, everybody, electricians, plumbers, the whole 9 yards, blueprints, everything was right there in where I worked, in the office I worked in. And I would go and they'd say, okay, well, this classroom, the windows need to be this size so people can come in and observe the class. I said, well, is that glass going to be bulletproof? Oh, no. Well, then why is it big enough for a human to get through? Well, because we want to be able to see the class. Well, luckily, this didn't go through because the teachers were the one who pushed this. The teachers thought they were being observed to see if they were doing a good job or for their evaluations, not
Right.
because they wanted to see if they took the class. And I argued up and down that this is ridiculous. Why would a gunman use a door to break the glass and you're in? It
Right.
just and this has I hope it's stopped, but it may have continued because Cameron, as you know, people don't, you can't be at high alert constantly. You just burn out. So you'll have a school shooting and then things will settle down. It's like a, sine wave. You got a school shooting. Okay. Oh my God. Then things will die off and everything's quiet again. And everybody forgets about it because you got life. You got things you got to
Right.
do. So you can't be at that level all the time. But when that happens, that's when the perfect opportunity is like, wait a minute. What are they teaching our kids to do? What are they doing with schools? How are these new schools being built? And then it'll die off again. So it definitely is up to the state legislature or whoever, state board of education, to get these schools again. I don't want them to be prisons, but why do you need a big rectangle? Why can't you put portholes? You want somebody to look in? Fine, look through a porthole. Make them different sizes for different size people. Excuse me, and do it that way.
Hmm.
Anyway, so what I wanted, the point I wanted
No,
to
no.
get.
I've always wanted to. I've always wondered about that and always asked that. Because it's been so many years and all this. And that's very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't have a ton of parents who listen to my show because I don't have kids. But what would your advice to parents be in their local schools to keep their children safe? What should they do?
I tell you what, parents and even the kids themselves, because I've pushed forward, especially middle and high school. Look, if you want to be in the military, you want to be a police officer, firefighter, whatever, start a committee. It's your school. Take ownership. I see you at athletic events, whatever. You take ownership of the school. Take ownership of this issue. You don't want no one to be hurt or injured or anything, and just get a group together. And one thing you can do is observe. You can make a walk around that school. High schools nowadays, Cameron, I mean, they're like college campuses. They're huge. You got
Right.
1,000, 2,000 kids. And sometimes if you have SROs, if you don't, especially, I would definitely observe you to walk around. I guarantee you, Cameron, especially middle and high school, and maybe not so much elementary school, there's going to be an open door. There's going to be a door wedged open. I can go today in any of we got 12 high schools. I'm going to find a wedged door open. Why? Because the teacher wedged it open to get a smoke. The kid's got it wedged open to get a pizza. There's one of his buddies late, so he's got to come in and open that door. That door is going to be, and you don't think someone sees that? These shooters observe all this stuff. They know what goes on. They know what gates are open. They know which doors are wedged open. You just got to protect your school. It doesn't take very much. It really doesn't. So I ask kids, especially in high school, middle school, get on a committee or just get going with this. Walk around. You're not snitching on anybody. You're keeping your school safe. Parents, talk to your kids. You got to talk to them. You got to ask, what's going on? I need to know how they're doing these emergency drills. My son would just blow it off. Oh, yeah, we ran a drill today. Well, what was it about? What did you do? Did they have you in a lockdown? Did you evacuate? What was it you actually did? And if they, especially anything you hear evacuate or throwing things at a gunman, the red flag's got to go up. You go, whoa, I don't want my kid even involved in this. I should have been told. Most of the time, schools will tell parents or send out an email saying, we are going to run a active shooter drill on blah, blah, blah date or sometime this week. At least that way you get some warning. Find out how they're running it. Your kid doesn't have to participate in them. That's for darn sure if you think it's dangerous. But on the other side, you want them to keep going to that school. And if something does happen, you got to get them to change it. You got to get them to use some common sense. So that's my message to parents. And overall message would, number one, like I said, you keep yourself safe, then you can help others. And the
Yeah.
second thing is make sure you've got armed school resource officers on campus.
Now, to that, I want to address that for a moment. School resource officers, it seems to me, have been a bit of a disaster when it comes to arrest records for children and all that type of thing. Some people have said, oh, we should arm teachers, sort of thing. What is your opinion of school resource officers? Do the police need to be in schools? What about armed teachers? Do any of these things move the needle?
School resource officers, yes. Have they had a bad rap because of the media? Sure. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, guy just stood by. Uvalde, they just stood by. Overall, I'm still going to say over 90% of school resource officers are an advocate. They are not there to arrest your children. They are not there to harass your children. That is not their job. They are an advocate between the school, the student, and the parent. They are there to make sure those students are safe. Luckily, here in Florida, the legislature passed that. These school resource officers want to do the job. They go through intense training. They know what they're doing. They volunteer for this. Yes, they're paid. Yes, they go through training. Some, not all, but some certain jurisdictions here in Florida use police officers to be part of their school resource officers. But again, everyone I've seen, even though I'm biased because I'm former law enforcement, they love these people. They enjoy having them there. They feel safer when they're there. So I advocate for that school resource officers, they're not a disaster. They are there to protect those kids. Now, on the other thing about arming teachers, apparently Texas and Utah, I think right now do allow that. And there are teachers and in both of those states that are armed. I was on the fence about this. I still lean towards not having it done only because being former law enforcement, if something does happen, I have no idea who the good people are and who the bad guy is. If I see someone with a gun in the school and they've been calling an active shooter, I'm going after that person with the gun. I just don't know. I mean, are they going to wear something, an orange? What are they going to do? How am I going to know that's a good guy? So that I have a problem with. However, I'm more interested in the perception. And to give you an example, and we'll try to change this over. Let's say there's two houses in a neighborhood, fairly safe neighborhood. One house has a sign out front that says ADT, I got a security system. And you see something that looks like a camera. House next to it got nothing. If I'm a burglar, I'm not going to take the chance. I'm going to the house without a sign out there. I don't see any cameras. I'm going in. To me, it's the same thing with the school system. Years ago, after I had left, the Pinellas County sheriff said, yeah, we're going to allow teachers to be trained to have weapons in the schools. Not that they actually did it, but just that perception that if I'm a shooter and I think, well, wait a minute, that county said there's a possibility. Not that they have them yet, but there's a possibility those teachers could be armed. I saw it on the news. They said, yeah, I'm going to go over to this county over here that's a gun-free zone. I'm good to go. So to me, it's more about perception that, yeah, we're going to allow our teachers to be trained and then just let it go, let it die off. And let the media be involved in it. Oh, yeah, they're training teachers to be in such and such county for these school systems. Good. Put it out there for the media. Let people know. That doesn't mean they actually are armed. Just the perception there. So if I'm a shooter, it's like, wait a minute, I remember something on the news. I'm not going to go to those schools. I don't want to get shot up. So I'm still on the fence about that because I do want to see the statistics from Utah and Texas and other states that I know that I don't know of that have allowed this. I would love to see the statistics on, if there's been a kid that stole a gun or a shooting, the gun went off or whatever. Hasn't happened yet. I haven't seen anything on the news about it. You'd think it'd be big news that happened because the media would love that. Oh my God, this teacher was armed and he shot a student by mistake or he shot himself in the foot or whatever. So I'd love to hear that and then make a further decision. But right now, too new. It's too new to a decision.
Well, we're coming up to the hour, so why don't you let us know about what your book is and where we can find it online and where we can keep up with you online.
Yes, I appreciate that. It's called The First 5 Minutes. If you type that in on Amazon, you should get, one of the things that kick in there. It's a guidebook. It's only 77 pages. I didn't want to write a 200 or 300 page diatribe that's going to sit on the shelf and collect dust. It basically is about implicit memory of training enough so you get the confidence to go into a lockdown. Like I said, those steps. And in that book, and I'll show it here, even though we're not seeing it. I've got what's called a quick reference.
No, we do full video.
Oh, perfect.
On Spotify and YouTube.
It is a credit card size quick reference card. And it's in the book. I mean, this one's laminated, but you can download and laminate it. And it's going to tell you everything that you might have forgotten. Because guess what, Cameron? You're going to forget. In a panic situation, no one knows how they're going to react. And I can tell you stories about people actually freezing. So you look down here, lockdown, I did this, I did that. Oh, geez, I forgot to pull the blinds down. Great. It's a great tool because, and the only reason I thought of this is because I have a doctor friend who's in the emergency room. She goes, oh, yeah, we use those all the time. What are you talking about? She says, I don't know. I haven't heard of code purple in years. All of a sudden, there's a code purple. I had to look on the card. Like, what the heck is that? So it's something usable that they can put on with their lanyard for the copier card or their key pass, whatever. Just something that's in the book. Anyways, yes, you can find it on Amazon. I'm also on LinkedIn with my name on LinkedIn, and I've got a Facebook page on the First 5 Minutes. And the reason it's called First 5 Minutes is because FBI data so far, FBI data does go back a few years, shootings in schools on average are between 3 and 5 minutes. Seems like a short time. When you're in it, it seems like forever. But it's about 3 to 5 minutes. That's why I named it the First 5 Minutes. And again, you can find it on Amazon. And I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. That's where you'll find me. If you have any questions, my email is on there. And I encourage people to, especially parents, to stay aware of what's going on with their kids at school and their emergency procedures.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is obviously a very hot topic and has been very enlightening, but it's always nice to break through the social media rhetoric and the panic and have some real conversation with real experts. So thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Visit us online at CameronJournal.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I love to talk to my followers and listeners, so please feel free to get us on social media at Cameron Cowan on Twitter, and we'll see you next time on the Cameron Journal podcast. Thank you.